Welcome to Leadership Matters, a podcast from the Bailey Group. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, president of and partner at the Bailey Group, where we believe better leaders create healthier workplace environments, healthier humans, and a better world. On this show, we explore real stories, practical insights, and honest conversations to help you lead yourself and others better. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Leadership Matters. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, and today I'm joined by Chris Heim, CEO of Atomic Data.
Hey, Kaylee.
Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
I'm excited to have you. So tell us about Atomic Data. It's an organization I've been familiar with, and I'd love to hear as CEO how you describe the mission of Atomic Data.
Yeah, so we are Atomic Data. We have two companies, actually, Atomic Data and Foundation Technologies. We are an IT services company, so we provide IT services for other companies. So in some cases, we're their full IT department. In other cases, we work in kind of a co-managed environment. The platform and our purpose is we call it humanizing the IT experience. And our mission is to provide amazing IT support, but to go a little bit further than that and really touch the human being behind the technology. And it's subtle, but it's really powerful for us. And so this humanizing the IT experience really feeds into our culture. We have three pillars. We call it people first. We call it, like driven to solve, or everybody has a client is how we refer to it. And then it's beyond service. And beyond service is just doing that little bit extra. And that's our platform. So Atomic Data and Foundation work, they're kind of brother-sister companies. Foundation is focused on the Apple ecosystem. So all the clients in that environment have primarily chosen to run an Apple environment.
Got it.
And then within Atomic Data, we have two segments. Think of it as just mid-market. We call it Atomic Core. And then large venue would be large stadiums, sports stadiums like Allianz Field here in Minneapolis.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So tell us about your journey to Atomic Data. How did you end up 18 months ago accepting the role as CEO?
So this is the third company I've been the CEO for, and that's been awesome in and of itself. Atomic Data, it's a sad backdrop story. The founder, Jim Wolford, passed away about 3 years ago at age 55, had built the entire business, and it's just a really, really tightly run company by this founder, and he passed away suddenly. And so the company was left without a leader, and the team stepped up and they were managing the business, but it needed a leader. Also, Jim's wife, Amy, widow, they had all their wealth tied up in the business, and there was something that needed to be done to, help her as well. And so they recapitalized the business and brought in private equity, and I was recruited by the private equity firm. My getting there through that referral, though, is kind of a beautiful story of networking. That Molly Simmons is a local friend, a businesswoman, and she is an investor with this private equity firm who's located in Jacksonville, Florida. And they said, "Hey, do you know anybody that might be able to run this company?" And Molly thought of me and introduced me, and that's how that all came together.
How did you feel when you were first, assessing if this was something that was interesting to you, something that you were all in on? What were kind of your initial thoughts or feelings as you're thinking about this decision?
I was in between companies, and I was exploring what my next was. And I had kind of a working theory of what I was looking for. And to be honest, this was just a dream come true. I wanted to work for a service-focused company because my feeling is when you're a service-based company, your culture is what you bring to market. And so I love culture. I call my leadership style, people first leadership. And so I wanted to work for a service-focused company where we could really work on the culture and bring that to market. I wanted to work for a private equity-backed company, and I have some reasons for that. But I've led family-owned companies and so forth, and they're all great. But I really wanted to work for a private equity company that wanted to grow and scale. And I was looking for a company that was big enough that, since this is my third time being a CEO, and I just wanted enough complexity there, and I definitely got the complexity.
Careful what you wish.
Yeah, no, it's been great, but it all lined up with what I was looking for. It's a beautiful team, a beautiful company,
Wow.
and and yeah, that was I joined in September 1st of 24.
How have we talk a lot with CEOs about those first 90 days being such a critical point
Yeah,
in the trajectory
yeah.
of the CEO's time within the organization. How have those first 90 days in these three different companies or three different environments been similar? And what's been different about this most recent environment compared to your previous
Yeah.
CEO opportunities?
There's a couple. One, I guess I'll call it the psychology behind it, the trauma behind it. Like with Jim having passed away, and the company's maybe will be 25 years, this year. So it's had been around for a while, and he was a beloved person in the Twin Cities, and that was traumatic. And him passing away, I think when he passed away, I think the team just came to work and they just carried forward. And and I felt at first when I joined that there was kind of this emotional release by a lot of people that because we had a path forward, I think that was the first time that some people had like fully kind of dealt with either him being gone or what does this mean for the future of the company. And so that was hard. That was hard on me. It was hard on them. And there was just a lot of emotion, so I feel like I did a pretty good job of managing that very delicately. It's been really hard though, because I also inherited a business from a founder. It's now investor led. There were a lot of things that weren't in place. So one of the next answers to your question is this company was less structured than I was used to. The other two companies that I had led had also been around for a while, but had been more traditionally structured, I would say. So it was difficult to start, come in and on one hand, be a good listener and learn, but clearly see there was a lot of changes we had to make around people, process, just a lot of things. And to try to earn the trust of everyone, yet, be a strong leader that has to make strong decisions. And ultimately, we have an investor that has certain expectations. That was the complex backdrop of all this.
How did you balance all of that?
I think the top thing it's what came to mind is just spending time with people. And I probably could criticize myself. I could have spent a lot more time. And but just really I try very hard to not just assume what needs to be done, although I'm probably guilty of having my own assumptions on things, but to really listen, try to reveal the truth and try to ask questions that kind of lets the answer reveal itself so that you can create alignment.
Hmm.
I think we did a decent amount of that. And just taking time and trying to be a good communicator. I will say all of that though, it was a lot of change, and as good as any of us think we are at communication, it's never enough.
Hmm.
And I just give a ton of props to the team. They're very resilient. We've been through a lot. We've implemented a lot of change. And I did have to make, some different leadership, structures and building the right team, not just my direct reports, but just making sure it all functions. We have the right leaders in place that can, be there every day with everybody. And yeah, I'm happy to say we're 15, 16 months later. I think we're largely there. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
And it is an incredible amount of change in such a fairly short amount of time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Change management. I think it's one of the things that I'm learning as and always trying to get better as an executive, but you spend a lot of time as a leader in meetings thinking about things and strategizing and laying out all the different options and you can spend months, for sure weeks, but sometimes months, like being totally engrossed in something and you just know it inside and out, so convinced that it's the right thing. And then you bring it to your team who hasn't been part of all those meetings, isn't emotionally invested, hasn't been through all the debates on this option versus that option. And it's a very vulnerable position to be in as an employee when a change is introduced to, to not like, what is this? How does this affect me? And that I just try to take that so seriously, but want to do a better and better job all the time of the way we communicate that, to bring that to the team and help people kind of find like their own ownership and their own like emotional connection to these decisions. I, change management means a lot of different things, but I think it starts with just helping people be emotionally connected to what the business is doing so that they can trust that it's being done for the right reasons,
That is really well articulated.
Oh, thank you.
And I hear this theme of
Yeah.
what you touched on earlier around this people first leadership style that you talked about. Where does that come from, Chris?
Well, I think, so servant leadership is what I would technically say that I think I subscribe to. Um, I didn't quite know what that term meant, but it's like, it's kind of in here. It's like, I wake up every day and my primary thing I think about is how's everybody doing? I might not do the best job every day of like expressing it because there's also like, it's a busy job and I've got to be heads down focused. But I think servant leadership is really focused on how do you create the best environment for everybody to thrive and succeed? I can't do people's jobs for them. I want to create a motivating environment, but I don't feel that it's my job to motivate people. I think that's something that every person has to kind of bring forward. But I do feel very responsible for trying to create the right environment where people can thrive. And so servant leadership, I think, can sometimes be a little bit confused. Like, what does it mean to like serve somebody else? So I just kind of changed the terminology. It's people first. We still have to run a business. There's hard decisions to be made. And sometimes it can be a little confusing. What do you mean we're people first when sometimes we have to let people go or make changes to benefits or all these things that might affect people? And I struggle with perfectly explaining that sometimes myself. But I think the key thing I emphasize is what do you think about first when you're implementing business, whether you're a leader of people or or just a leader of a function? It's what are you thinking about first? Is it the business decision and the dollars behind it, or are you starting out by thinking about what's the human impact? And to me, at its simplest form, that's what it's about, is that starting point, that mindset. And so if you believe in that, then can you build a business where you train managers to be a little bit more people oriented? You lean in a little bit more to career development. You build a culture where that people first mindset is what we, bring to our clients. And so it's a very soft, I guess, definition, but it's a very tangible, hard, like very substantive thing for me, in total.
What have been some of the most formative experiences you've had that have shaped you into the leader you are today?
Yeah. Well, I think on the people first piece, I think I always felt a little out of place as I was being provided opportunities to be a manager, a leader. I'm a high empathy person, and I think for a while I kind of felt like I had this idea of who I was supposed to be as a manager and as what I had kind of seen as in other people managing, and maybe not all the best managers. And I think at one point I just said I just need to put my own pair of shoes on and see how they fit and just go my own way. And this would be about 11 years ago, my first year that I was a CEO. Believe it or not, I was asked to be a CEO, and the first time I ever thought about what does that mean was the day that I was asked to be a CEO. I had never thought about it before. In my first year, I struggled a little bit with what does it mean to be a CEO? So I came up with these three, kind of metaphors. The first one is a beach ball. I call it just be me. And the idea is a beach ball is only fun if it's fully inflated. And so I need to like take care of myself and be fully inflated so that I can be the best to others. That was one of my first metaphors. And then the second one is the upside down triangle, which I found this beautiful photo of an upside down rock stack. And to me, that's what people leadership is the leaders at the bottom, kind of like lifting and supporting. And then the third was a calligraphy pen. And that is, to create your own story, and that we're always writing our story, and that I'm always in control of my mindset. Even I can't control the world. I can't control other people, but I can always control how I respond to things. So figuring out who I was and using those metaphors, that was really powerful. And I've been blessed to have some amazing mentors. One of them, Sherman Black, he's the entire reason that I am a CEO. And I shared with you in the prep meeting I got there. But just trying to surround myself with people that won't just tell me that, that'll tell me the truth and help me learn more about myself. That's been really important.
The Sherman Black story is a
Yeah.
really great one.
Yeah.
I would love to have you share with listeners
Yeah.
how you first, and it was interesting just now for you to say the first time I ever explored what does it mean to be a CEO was kind of when I was first in that role, trying to figure out what does this really mean for me.
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you two stories there. So I guess, yeah, I had, it's not like when I was 25 years old that I was like, I have an ambition to be a CEO. I had never thought about it. What I tell people is I focused on saying yes. My whole goal was when my managers left a big meeting, a board meeting, whatever, I wanted to be the person they were talking about, like, who do we give this project to? And then that's I always just wanted to be flexible because I've been around too many people that too narrowly define their role and they put walls up, and then I think they get limited on their opportunities. So the only common thread that I can find in my career is that I just built the reputation of bring that to Chris, he probably can figure that out, and then I would build a team and get stuff done. So I never thought that I would, be a CEO specifically. My story about Sherman is when I was at Ramage Corporation. I had been there about 7 years. I was getting a little antsy, was looking for my next opportunity internally, whatever, and I just wasn't feeling very confident that my next opportunity would be within the company. And so I had started interviewing outside the business. I didn't have a job offer yet, but I had found a job that I thought would have been pretty awesome, and was pretty sure in the next few weeks that I'd get the job offer. And Sherman came to me, I want to say it was on a Tuesday, and said, Chris, I've got something really interesting for you. We're going to be making some changes, and the person that's running our European office is going to be leaving the business. And I'd like you to run both the Americas and Europe. It's a chance for you to, get some international experience. And I'd like to announce it to our board the following Tuesday at his board meeting. And so I thanked him and kind of sat on it all week. And it was weighing on me heavily going into the weekend that if I received this job offer, how embarrassed Sherman would be that he announced this, Chris is going to take on this new role. And then a week or two later, I take this job, and I felt bad for him. I felt bad for me, and just none of it felt right. But I didn't have this other job offer in hand. So I grabbed Sherman on that Friday afternoon, and I just said, look, I'm going to have this conversation 100% for you. If you decide to terminate me, I'm fine with that as an outcome. I just need to get this off my chest. So I shared with him that, I'm likely going to leave the company, and he asked me a lot of questions about this job. And we just kind of left it at that. And he goes, I'd like to meet with you on Monday. He pulled the board together over the weekend, and they formalized a job offer for me and some incentives. And on Monday morning, he had a plan for me, and it was a pathway to become a CEO. And, the cool thing about it, so it's really cool. Like, that's how I became a CEO, was that situation. But what's cooler is the trust that we had together in the relationship. And I share that a lot. Like, I would love to think that somewhere along the line, I built that level of trust with an employee where, it's not about the business decision. It's just about doing the right thing. And Sherman's still really close to me today.
You can see some emotion come up as you talk about that. That is a beautiful story.
Yeah, thanks.
How did that experience change that relationship, if at all?
Oh, I think we're both really proud of that conversation. Just the fact that unintentionally, like, we built a relationship where we both could have that, right? I mean, how cool is that? And you don't intentionally build those levels of relationships; they just happen. And now, I mean, Sherman's a great friend. We've both gone through some life issues, and we're there for each other. I don't see him often, but we stay in touch, and I just know he'd be there for me as I would, for anything. So, yeah.
How much longer did the two of you work together then before that?
Yeah, probably only a year and a half.
Okay.
So he appointed me as CEO. So it was kind of a 3-step plan, I guess. Appointed me as, managing director. We wanted to monetize that business. So I helped sell that business. So I was leading a little complex story. I'll try to simplify. We kind of bifurcated into two companies. There was like this faster moving software business. And then Ramage was this, had been around for a long time, appointed me the leader of that. And then I helped take it to market and we sold it. And then the part of the sales pitch is, and Chris will be the CEO to run it. So it was kind of a 3-step plan that evolved from that. And I think that took like a year and a half.
How did it feel stepping into that CEO role for the first time?
What was interesting is, the day before that, I was just Chris Heim, the leader of sales and marketing, and was kind of peers with a lot of people. And this is the part that I hadn't really thought about what it means to be a CEO till I was. And then the next day, I'm like this different title and this different role, and instantly, no matter you're looked at differently. It's a different role. I have different responsibilities. I had to learn, what does it mean to be a CEO? What conversations is it appropriate for me to be in? And what things am I'm not, I shouldn't be in that conversation anymore. I'm not invited to that conversation anymore. And, just working through all those dynamics, that was, that first year it was a lot. Not necessarily bad, but it was just a lot of processing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big transition.
Yeah.
What would you say was one of the hardest parts about that transition for you personally, Chris?
Well, I think the hardest part was I had to figure out who I was, which is where those metaphors, and maybe I kind of told the story out of sequence, but I just needed to figure out who I was, what I stand for. Like I didn't want to be somebody, I didn't want to be some other CEO. And as I was saying, when I was growing up being a manager, I think I kind of felt like I'm supposed to behave that way or dress that way or whatever. And I was kind of done with that. Like I just needed to be me. And so I think my biggest challenges were doing that. And I don't know, I just had some friends help me. I attended a few seminars, and this whole idea of like discovering your why led to those 3 metaphors. And I mean, even to this day, that is who I am. So that was really great work. It's paid off. It's been really helpful.
I'm so glad you touched on that. And those metaphors were visceral. I mean, especially the beach ball.
Yeah, the beach ball.
That.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
And there's so many, even clients that we work with where it's, give me the playbook. How do I do this? And there are certainly skills. You've touched on a lot of them,
Yeah.
communication and empathy. But there's also this need for self-awareness. What are your strengths? What's your why? What's important to you so that you can bring out your most authentic leadership style? And there isn't a one-size-fits-all that
Yeah.
if you can just emulate this, you will be the dream leader. It's what does the dream leader for you look like?
Yeah, and I will say I'm still a student of this role. Even though I've been doing this, I've been a CEO now 11 years or so. I feel like I'm still a rookie. And part of that is the world's changing around us so much. Things that I felt were effective and I did maybe 10 years ago, it's a different world now, and it's, a different age profile, both for me, like I'm older and I'm that much older than young people in a business. And maybe I don't connect the same as when I was a 45-year-old CEO as a 55-year-old, CEO. Even just simple things like how prominent Slack is versus email, and just how we communicate, and then just all these questions around like where is AI going, and young people not knowing if there is even a career for them. All of it's constantly evolving. The things happening in our city that are just totally outside of business, but they're real, they're human. That's real life going on. People getting married for the first time, buying a home for the first time, having children for the first time. And so we're all evolving. And I think the learning for me is that I have to evolve faster than that to stay sharp and stay ahead of it, and not just rely on the fact that I have all these years of experience, because a lot of those years of experience, I might have built some knowledge and wisdom, but it's the activity needs to change along with the times. And yeah, I'm trying to be a constant student of that.
Practically speaking, what does that look like for you?
Well, you have to build the right leadership team around you, because as much as I want direct feedback, my role is it's the last to know. And, and I was starting out, like, there's always hard decisions. And I think the role as CEO is probably always going to be slightly misunderstood as the source of, change and, accountability and all these things that have a little bit of a negative connotation. And whoever's in a CEO role, you just have to kind of deal with that. Um, but dealing with that while also building this trust environment, to me, I'm just leaning heavily on my executive team because they are in the day to day, more. They get to hear the conversations, the whole well-rounded conversation in ways that I won't hear. And I've just had to get increasingly comfortable with being, just probably always a little bit ill-informed on everything that's going on and trying my best to understand and plug into everything, but just really trusting that I'm getting that right feedback through my executive team and that they're in meetings that I'm not in and they're answering questions and saying things as similar to how I would say them, which means that we're in unison as a leadership team.
That alignment piece.
Yeah.
So feedback, what's some challenging feedback that you've received either earlier on in your professional life, more recently, and how have you used that feedback?
Yeah. Well, feedback is a gift. It takes a mindset. You have to, and it's, I struggle with it just as much. I want feedback. Sometimes you only want the positive feedback. Not really, but it's, I think communication is probably the biggest thing. And, I'm learning a little bit, and some of this is maybe the age difference that's starting to develop, but I don't want to be guilty of CEO speak, but I am guilty of it. I live in a mindset of strategy and 3-year planning and trying to understand markets and where to take risks and not take risks. And the business needs that. It needs that, that 3-5-year plan, but translating that to what does that mean tomorrow and helping each employee understand what those things might mean for them. There's a gap there sometimes. And so the feedback is, communication and maybe not, even though I feel like we have a great 3-year plan for an employee to say they don't understand the strategy of the business, that hurts at first to hear that. It might trigger defensiveness sometimes a little bit too, well, wait, we talked about this or that. But it's just to embrace that and to embrace the challenge that, okay, we have to find a different way to communicate this. We have to, we all need to hear things multiple times for it to sink in. So to not just assume that one meeting that we had 2 months when it was, a thing kind of layered into a company meeting that sunk in. And so this goes back to change management, is making sure that we have multiple touch points at all different levels and complete alignment around these things so that the communication isn't just about, how good is the CEO doing at communicating? It's how are we doing as a company and communicating? And so I think taking some of that feedback and channeling it into turning that into that's also part of strategy. Strategy isn't just the market facing, this is what we're going to do to win in the marketplace. Strategy is also the rollout of those things and helping people connect with it. And I'm trying to embrace that feedback as much as I can.
Super powerful.
Oh, thanks.
So I'm super curious to hear from you. It sounds like you're very open, lifelong learner, student. I love how you talked about continuing to evolve. What have you learned about your own values, and how have you intentionally integrated those into the cultures that you lead or contribute to?
Well, so maybe some of this is just, so family's everything, to me. I would imagine everybody answers that. So I don't consider that a unique answer, but bringing that value to work matters to me. And that's part of people first, as well as, a business is there to make money and do certain things, but we're also responsible for creating we're creating an environment. And for some people, work might be the hardest part of their day. For others, it might be the best part of the day because they have something going on at home. And so, one of my values, if it's family, that means a lot to me. I try to bring that. How do we create an environment where everybody can kind of be, they can be a good family. They can have a good family, which means how do we create an environment that people aren't carrying bitter stress home from work, back to their home, or a safe landing spot and an environment where people have, relationships where they can share something that might be going on in their life. I can't control those conversations, but I can help influence that environment. So I think that would be, one that I'm proud of, the fact that family is everything to me. But it's what you do with that as a leader at work that I think, kind of makes it matter. Otherwise, it's just my thing. I'm a constant learner. I embrace change. I love change. I kind of love that. I respect the fact that not everybody does, and I don't know that I completely understand it, but I respect the fact that some people are really scared of change. And so I think maybe one of my next values is I've learned that words matter, and you can say the same thing with one word and it triggers one response, and you say it. So like for me personally, I've removed the word chase from my language, and it's a psychology thing for me that chase has this little bit of like desperation to it. It's pursuit. So I pursue things and I try to not chase things, because I feel like I'm chasing some outcome or something, whereas pursuit is I'm focused and I have a plan. Um, Change versus evolve, I would say, is similar, because change can trigger kind of a visceral thing, and but evolve kind of acknowledges the fact that everything in our lives, the world, everything is evolving, and we've got to stay on pace with that. And so, yeah, that, just like really connecting with the right words to make sure that you understand the emotion that might come with it, so that you can connect with the human side of that in business. And I'm not perfect at any of this stuff, but I do think about it and I care a lot about it. So maybe that makes me just a little bit better at it in implementation.
You're very intentional.
Yeah. Intentional is a good word, I would say, to describe a lot of the things that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, the curiosity piece comes back, even with the intentionality around the language that you're using and
Yeah.
the psychology behind that.
Yeah. I came up with a new, so words matter. I was getting some feedback, going back to feedback, that, I want to share how we're doing financially. I want our team to understand financials. And I got some feedback because the previous owner hadn't really talked a lot about numbers. And so we're presenting on, we're this so much revenue and profit and all that. And it initially kind of came across as, well, we're PE owned, and now all we really care about is money. Or it was kind of like a little bit of feedback on, hey, maybe we're emphasizing this too much. And in my mind, we weren't. I was just trying to share, but I had to embrace that feedback. And so somebody had said, like this word EBITDA is kind of becoming a 4-letter word, even though it's 5 letters. So I had this idea of we're no longer going to talk about profit. We're going to talk about fuel. And so we talk about profit as being the fuel that we need to run the business. Like, we can't invest in cool things and increase benefits and do all these things if we don't have enough fuel. And just like going on a long trip, it's no fun to drive with 1/8 of a tank of gas and having to constantly. And so that would be like cash flow. Like, it's no fun to run a business that's tight on cash. And so I'm kind of embracing this word fuel as a way of helping people connect to the fact that you want to be part of a growing, profitable business, but we're not profitable just for the sake of trying to make a bunch of money. We're trying to create like a really strong working environment where we can have long-term plans, and you can hang your hat of your career on this business and feel confident. And so that's kind of a recent one that I came up with.
I love that metaphor. It just is so clear.
Yeah.
And feels very appropriate, that fueling metaphor of cash flow and having to stop and refuel, and the momentum that's gained if you can continue on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I came up with it like 10 minutes before our most recent all-company meeting, and I didn't even have a chance to ask anybody, like, hey, will this land? I just decided to use it. I think it's been okay. I think we're having some fun with that.
Yeah, that is really neat.
Yeah.
So, Chris, you're leading in sort of unprecedented times right now. From your vantage point, what are the biggest challenges facing leaders in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things that comes to mind, going back to chase versus pursuit, is there's this kind of fear of missing out with AI and automation, and so this is not a human answer. This is just a very practical business answer I'm going to give you first, is trying to figure out what are we supposed to be doing with all this wonderful technology. And it's a very disruptive platform, a ton of huge potential. It's also like, it could overnight disrupt a company as well. Like if somebody had their, their laser beam on a certain market and they got really good at this, how quickly it could disrupt anything that we would think would be a stable market. Like, I think that's difficult. And this is why it's so important for leaders to have time in your schedule to do strategic thinking and to plan out. And I can't say that I have the answers, but if you're leading minute by minute and just tactically focused all the time, this big landscape of all this stuff happening, whether it's technology or, just some of the, tariffs is another good, just all these things that are changing that could disrupt your business. That's really hard. And that job sits on top of the job of all the other things, right? Taking care of the culture and, just and it's very difficult to know for sure, are you spending the right amount of time, and are you thinking out far enough? And are you spending enough? Like, should we be spending more and being more of a thought leader and innovating here, or a fast follower? Or, everything that everybody's doing right now, it's going to settle down and a solution is going to come out in a year from now. I don't have the answer. I have some thoughts and all that, but that one really stands out. And it kind of sits on top of, I think about, so I have an MBA. That's great, but I also feel like I've got my second MBA over the last 5 years. We've just gone through so many, like, COVID and instantly having to run a business where everybody's at home. And that followed on with, highest rates of inflation that we've ever seen and a disrupted supply chain, and it just keeps going. Like, the pace of change and just all the big things that we're working with, it's just constant. And so that's not a 2026 challenge necessarily, but it's just always there. And I feel like it's just kind of getting increasingly difficult. So that would be one answer for you.
How does that feel to you? It's constantly getting increasingly difficult. I mean, I heard earlier you enjoy change, you like change, which of course made me wonder, where does all that come from and
Yeah.
what's behind that? But is it exciting? Is it terrifying? Like, what are some of the feelings that you sit with?
Yeah, it's not terrifying. Not terrifying. It's mostly fascinating and exciting, for me. I guess the bit of like reprieve that I have from it, I just have confidence that, especially in a service business, that at the end of the day, it's still humans taking care of humans, and technology is an enabler. And so my view is, as long as we are really good at taking care of our clients, we have great relationships with them, and we understand their business, the backdrop of however fast technology moves, we're going to be needed. As long as we stay sharp and we stay a few steps ahead of where everybody else is at, somebody is going to need somebody else to help them, and they're going to have questions about, how do I do this or that? And so it doesn't concern me as long as we stay sharp and keep leaning in. And that's why, evolving, that's why we have to keep evolving, because these things are happening. We can either let them happen to us, or we can take advantage of that change and lean in and have that be part of the business strategy. And I think that's why I'm not concerned about it. There are parts of our business that are getting, potentially automated really fast, and we've got to make sure that we're investing at an equal pace, because some of that automation might put pressure on pricing or whatever. But I don't lose sleep at night over that stuff.
Yeah, that human element being so important.
Yeah.
Now, you've inherited, you've built, perhaps rebuilt senior leadership teams. When you think about the human element, the talent behind these organizations, what do you look for, aside from, technical qualification, when you're thinking about strong leaders to help you as your guiding coalition bring about these incredible outcomes for the organizations that you're leading?
Yeah. Well, I guess it has to be a culture fit. And, I like to really emphasize, like, it's not my culture. It's not a leader's, it's everybody's culture. So part of the responsibility is to make sure that you're bringing, especially in leadership roles, but you're bringing people into the company that fully align with the culture, and that can be that can be good nurturers and foster the future of that culture. I think that's so important, because you can be super talented and the same leader might be a great fit in one company and not in another because of the culture. So culture fit is really great. I think the the people leadership skills, the ability to communicate, a lot of the things that we talked about, those are really, really high, for me, because I want somebody that can meet me more than halfway. So if we can meet each other 60 to 70% of the way, there's a good overlap there. And I don't need somebody that works exactly like me, because that's too much like me, and then we're going to be working on the same things. But I don't want somebody that's completely opposite of me with no overlap, because then we're going to have constant tension of we're going to disconnect in communication. So I can't say that I have an exact formula. I think you get the feel for that when you're meeting with somebody, is that we want to have a good, let's just say a 20% overlap, that we're that much similar, so we can have a really beautiful connection, but we can part ways and go scale and do great things for the company. And it's more of a visual thing for me, but I think that's what I'm looking for in leaders.
I've never heard that meet me over halfway, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's also sort of a willingness to sort of go beyond so that there is that overlap.
Yeah. The reason that's important is, if I'm more of a visionary, and I'd say that I probably am then, an operations minded person, I'm going to be, whether I like it or not, I'm not bringing that idea forward in an operations mindset. That's not my talent. My talent is, this is what this could be. And the more than an overlap is, I need somebody that can hear enough of that idea to say, is this what you mean, Chris? And like make that idea better. Similarly, I need to understand the world of somebody that's in more of an operations role and the issues that they're dealing with, because if I have impatience for it, because we're supposed to be here. And so, yeah, I think it works in any kind of relationship. I try to have that same thing with my wife. We have to have a good overlap on things in order to connect, so that we can talk about whatever the differences are, or with my kids or whatever. So, yeah, that's how I view that.
Mm. You talked about this family first
Yeah.
value of yours, and I see you light up anytime you talk
Yeah.
about your kids. What were some of like the characteristics or values that you and your wife Heidi tried to intentionally instill in them, knowing that someday you'd launch them into the world of
Yeah.
professional?
Well, I think a couple of things came to mind as you were asking that. My wife says this. She says, "Feel the feels," and to just like we have to take time to feel whatever we're feeling, and then get off of it, right? And so, feel the feels is something she says a lot, and really encourage our kids. Like, the whole range of emotions are good, because you have to get those out of you, and then you have to learn how to deal with each of those emotions. And so I would give props to my wife.
Very cutting edge of you.
Yeah. So feel the feels, and then, create great experiences. That's something we've tried to instill in our kids, that, it's a materialistic world. We all want nice things, and I want nice things for myself and my family as well. But we talk a lot about that. What we really want to do is create great experiences together. And, those great experiences is what creates the family bonding. And, you might sacrifice a few things, not driving the nicest car, all those things, so that you can, at least this is our philosophy, so we can go on a nice vacation every year. We've prioritized that. And it just, we talk to our kids about it, that, creating great experiences isn't about, whatever your economic status is. You can create a great experience. I can tell you a funny story if you want to hear it, but with my son, but just creating a great experience is just taking time to be together beyond just the day-to-day mundane stuff. My little story.
Yes. Tell me
I
about
think
you
my
and
son,
Grant.
I think it was I'm going to make it third grade. He was pretty young, third grade. We went down to Naples and over MEA weekend. So it was like a 3-day weekend, and stayed at a pretty nice place. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was the Ritz. It was a nicer place, and we did some cool things. And the teachers told us that, when all the kids came back from MEA, oh, what'd you guys do over MEA? And some kids were talking about, these big vacations they went to, whatever. And my son Grant said, we went to Dairy Queen. So we went to Naples. We stayed at this cool place. We're on the beach and all that. And what he remembered was we went to the Dairy Queen in Naples, and we just had like an hour of it was just a really cool time.
Oh,
And yeah.
that got me in the feels. And it reminds me of a similar story where, you can do all the planning, you can do all the things, and at the end of the day, it's that quality time spent
You
together.
just got to create the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is true. like, people aren't going to remember the laptop that they worked on, or the snacks in the snack room, or the benefits, that were given. But what they really remember are how they were treated and what
Yeah.
those conversations felt like at the end of the day. And it doesn't mean that they're going to agree, to your point earlier, with every decision that's made. That's impossible.
Yeah.
Nobody is ever going to, you're never going to get complete consensus on every single decision.
No, you're not in, I'm still not 100% there and being okay with that, because, I expect better of myself than for that to be a reality, but it is a reality. And, we're all human beings. We all see the world through our own lens, and that'll be a constant challenge. And, there's, probably the hierarchy of needs. It's easier to embrace some of those softer things when some of the really hard things in life are taken care of. And that's not the reality for everybody, and everybody's going through, so even our receptivity to whatever's going on, I think it fluctuates depending upon, the other things that we're carrying around with us. Um, and, I don't exactly know what that formula is, but it's just so important to, just meet people where they're at. That's, again, ties back to, just creating that overlap. But yeah, intentionally creating, I suppose this is both true in at work, as I was describing it, is, like, create great experiences, is you just need to be together. And it doesn't mean you need to be together all the time. We don't set a mandate of having to be in the office every day, but I do think that you're a different company if you're remote all the time. And I kind of equate it to, like, getting together for the holidays, or, these special moments. Like, if you got together for somebody's birthday and you didn't do anything special, but you just got together, get together and celebrate the birthday, create a memorable moment from it. There you're creating a human moment. You can probably go months without seeing that person, but if you really celebrated that thing, and I kind of view that as, if we can have being together at work, or, just like, your quarterly events or whatever, like, just lean in a little bit more and just make those special, then you don't have to be together all the other times necessary. It's kind of more of a business necessity than it is mandating people be together all the time just because we feel like we're supposed to be together all the time. I don't know. To me, that's not as high of a priority.
Yeah, what I hear in that is quality over quantity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to end with one more question.
Yeah.
I'm curious, as you've, navigated what by all accounts is a very successful career, what are some of the internal challenges that you've had to overcome?
For sure, just being a self-critic and self-doubt, and, the imposter syndrome. I'm not embarrassed to say all those things are probably with me, all the time. I give myself a little bit of relief on that's probably what makes me a little bit more of a sensitive person. And, so all of our strengths become our weaknesses if over-indexed, and, we can overcome all of our weaknesses with our strengths. So, um, always trying to be better, but being kind to myself, and understanding that I can't live somebody else's life for them. I can't control how they're thinking, they're feeling, as much as it might hurt when it's not what I thought they were thinking or feeling, or as much as I want to change it. Um, yeah, I think that's the challenge, for me on my journey. But as I've told my wife years ago, the day that if you have to make a hard people decision, the day that any of that gets easy is the day that I need to be done. And, so I love the journey that I'm on. I love the fact that, that it's still really hard. I love the fact that I have to evolve. It's not everybody's job to evolve to whatever Chris Heim's view of the world is. I'm trying to evolve to meet them where they're at, as well. And, also, I'm just, maybe it's not really into your question, but it's such a proud moment when you see somebody, like, going back to, I wanted to be the person that when the manager walked out of the meeting, I was the person they gave the opportunity to. I take so much pride in watching people, like, find that little crack in the door, and they leverage it, and they propel themselves to the next level. I love seeing that. And that's one of the funnest, most rewarding parts of leadership is this those moments when that the work environment created an opportunity, a life-changing opportunity. If somebody just got up to that next level, or maybe it's not even the next level promotion, but they broke into a new, skill or whatever it is. I get a lot of juice out of that.
That is incredible. And what a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
so
Thank
much.
you, Kaylee. Thank you.
This has been a gift.
I'm so glad you do this. And, props to the Bailey Group.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks to our listeners for tuning in. Join us next week for another episode of Leadership Matters.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Leadership Matters. If today's episode resonated with you, would you do me a favor and share it with someone you care about? To learn more about the work the Bailey Group is doing in the world, check us out at thebaileygroup.com or follow us over on LinkedIn. We love sharing useful articles, helpful resources, and valuable tools to help you expand your leadership capacity. Like and subscribe, and join us next time for more honest conversations.